Deb Watson here with a quick demo of a basic still life, or how to paint shadows on objects. It is the shading on your object that makes it look real. This lesson will show you an easy way to get the shading right by painting it first in shades of gray. Once you get the shadows right, you can add a wash of color and you'll be pleased with the effect. Last comes the background, because your still life will look so much better with the background. Here's my outline, which you can find at watsonwatercolor.com. First, mix a puddle of neutral gray. I mixed ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. I mix and test until I'm happy with the color. Start with the round body of the teapot. Wet it with clean water so your shading will have soft edges. I'm using a small size 6 brush to apply the paint. If your paint spreads too much, you can lift it up with a paper towel or a thirsty brush. But the trick is to keep the entire area evenly damp. The light in this composition is coming from the top right. So the top right of the pot will be the lightest, and the bottom left will be the darkest. The spout has a bit of shading on the left side. There's a dark shadow under the round part on the top, and the lid is also dark on the left and lighter on the right. The handle will be brown or gold, it's your choice, but it is very dark. For that, I'm using more of the blue and brown paint and less water. The inside of the cup needs to be darker along the bottom and lighter at the top. Now, this is tricky in such a small space, and I often use a just damp brush to help get the paint right where I want it. You may have to paint it several times. For the main part of the cup, I wet it, but I leave a line of unpainted white paper along the top edge. Then the cup gets painted dark on the left and bottom and light on the right. At this point, dry your shading well and evaluate how it turned out. My shadows have dried much lighter than I wanted. That's not unusual. So I'm going to add more paint. If you have areas that are too dark, you can re-wet them and lift some of the color off, or even use Mr. Clean's magic eraser to bring back your whites. Last, I'm adding a shadow between the top and the side of the base. Wet the side of the base and add a shadow along the edge. Dry well and evaluate the shadows again. I think mine are good, but you can do as many layers as you want. Before I start adding the blue, I want to suggest a touch of pink in a few places on the pot and the cup. The pink may not be very visible in the final painting, but it will still add interest, since there's so much blue. I re-wet the areas and just gently lay on a watery bit of pink in a few random spots. Dry that, and you're finally ready for the blue. You can paint the blue on wet, or just paint it on dry paper over top of the shading. Paint the pot and the lid blue, and a little on the bottom of the spout. When you paint the cup, paint around the white flowers. I used black to edge the lid and as a line for the opening of the spout. A black line also goes underneath both objects. Use some of your blue to outline the white flowers and put a blue dot in the middle. Now you can paint the handle gold or brown if you think it needs more color. And last, we're going to paint the wood. Mix a big puddle of burnt sienna or brown. Paint the right side, that's the side in the sunlight, with very watery brown so it stays light. Then paint the left side and bottom with darker, more concentrated color. Notice that I switched to a bigger brush for that since it's an easy space to paint. If that isn't as dark as you want, you can add some of your black to your brown to make a darker brown. One easy way to suggest wood grain in a wet wash is to use a small brush with clean water. I'm just doing a squiggly wood pattern, and it's creating small blooms that suggest wood grain. Or you can use a thirsty brush and pick up a little of the color to lighten any area. Dry that well and add a background. For the best background, don't work from the top down. Start on one side and work your way across the painting. I'm using a big brush for the largest area, but I have to switch to a smaller brush so that I can get close to the objects without slopping paint onto them. A light background like this is fine. I personally like darker backgrounds, so I'm going to keep adding paint until my background is darker at the bottom and lighter at the top. To smooth the edges between the dark and the light or different colors, you can use a Just Damp watercolor fan brush. Which do you like better, the light background or the darker one? Whichever you like, please give the video a like. Just click the thumbs up button below the video. All that's left is to paint the little flower on the right side. I make the flower a tiny bit damp and put pink on each petal. The leaf is green, and I add a darker pink bit underneath the leaf. The center of the flower is gold, and I carefully put a tiny line of dark at the bottom of the gold and add a shadow to the left side of the flower. Last, add a white highlight to the lid and the body of the teapot, and a thin white line along the edges looks nice too. Even simple still life paintings take some thinking and observing to see where the shadows would go. So try painting everyday objects around you for practice. When you capture the light and the shadows well, even objects like a can of peas or a matchbook can make a striking and beautiful painting. That's the beauty of still life. Happy painting!